So we are now going to check understanding number three. Here we go. All right. So for which values of the variable is each radical defined? Now guys, since now we have a variable here, you have to be careful because you have to ask yourself, there are certain variables or values of the variables that may or may not make the equation defined. Meaning, in this example, the square root of 27x squared, all right, would always be valid, whatever your x is. So think of it this way. I usually tell kids when there is a variable inside the radical and you're being asked for what values of the variable is the radical going to be defined. Try three different things. Ask yourself if x is less than zero, meaning it's negative, is it going to be defined? So let's come up with a value. If x is -2, for example, if we put it in here, all right, -2 squared 4, and then times 27, that's 108. Oh, it has a square root. Okay, we don't know what the square root is. It's 10 point something, but that's okay as long as we know it's defined. So when x is negative, that's okay. What about if x is 0? What happens? If x is 0, the whole thing becomes 0. So if it's defined again, that's okay. What about if x is greater than 0? All right. Well, obviously, it's going to be defined. All right. Okay. Therefore, what would be the values of the variable such that the radical is defined? Well, it would be the set of all x's such that x is a real number. All right. Okay. So for the next one, this one you have to be careful, guys. All right. Because the exponent of the x is 3, the root, the index is 4. So let's take a look. The same thing, let's try stuff here. If x is negative, all right, let's ask ourselves, let's come up with the value. For example, -1. So if x is -1, what happens to that? So what's going to happen is the fourth root of -12 times -1. That would be the fourth root of -12 times -1 +12. Oh, it has a fourth root. All right. So if x is less than 0, yes, it is okay. All right. That means if x is less than 0, if it's negative, it is going to be defined. Okay. Now, what else? What about if x is equal to 0? Well, if x is equal to 0, that's going to be 0, so that's okay. All right. That means it's going to be defined. All right. What about if x is greater than 0? Now, let's come up with a value. If x is equal to 1, let's test it. That becomes fourth root of -12 times 1. That would be fourth root of -12. And that does not exist because a negative number does not have a fourth root. Therefore, this one, no. All right. Therefore, it is only going to be valid for values of x such that it's either less than 0 or equal to 0. Therefore, for this one, the answer would be the set of all x's such that x is less than or equal to 0. X is a real number. Now, some of you might say, oh, that's a new way of writing it. Can we write it a different way? Some kids would just write this. Okay. I will accept that, but really, as you go to university, this is the kind of notation you're going to write. Same goes for this one, for the first one. This is what kids would write. In fact, even the book does that. But I would rather that you learn how to do it this way. But certainly, if your answer for the first one is just this, that's okay. If your answer for the second one is just this, that's okay. All right? Thank you, and I'll see you next time.